when someone asks you to do something, what's your default answer? If they ask you for help, they ask you to do something. What's your default answer? Is it, I'll pray for you? Let me pray about it? A simple no? Or yes? It's really something for us to think about. John Acuff writes that when someone comes up to you and talks to you about something, asks you to do something, he says that we always, as Christians, love to use the I'll pray for you line. Right? In fact, he calls it pocket glitter. So when someone comes and asks you something and you say, I'll pray for you, throw the glitter and run the other way, because you don't want to commit to anything. So the easiest thing to say is, oh, sorry that you need that, I'll pray for you. Glitter, and then run off in the other direction, right? No answer. And the other answer is, well, I'll pray about it. Right? That's a good cop-out. My stepdad, Paul, that was his big thing. If you asked him to do anything, he'd say to you, well, I'll pray about it, which basically meant absolutely not. Because, who's to argue with God, right? You pray about it, you don't do it. Well, God must have said no, right? That's it. But we all have been known to do that on occasion, have we not? When it was something we didn't want to do, well, I'll pray about it. And I'm not just talking about church. I'm talking about outside of church as well, your families, right? You throw up that, I'll pray about it excuse. And then there are those of us that instinctively will just say no. I'm too busy. Got too much going on. I don't want to do that, right? When I was a kid, Mom was heavily involved in the church, and she would volunteer us for everything, voluntold. And on more than one occasion, I just wanted to say, no! No, I don't want to get up at 6 in the morning and go set up tables. Absolutely not. No, I don't want to go stack chairs. No, sir. Right? I wanted to say no. I didn't want to do it. I was lazy. I was argumentative. I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to say no. So then there are those of us who just simply, we just say no. We don't want to do something. Or we feel like we're not qualified to do something. We're afraid to, say anything other than no. And then you have your group that says yes. It's statistically proven that 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Right? And that's in your real jobs, and that's also in the church. So that means the group of people who say yes all the time is a very small percentage of people who actually say yes. Right? It's a small percentage of people who always or are willing to say yes. And as we look at this story today, our question for us is, what's our answer going to be when God comes and asks for us to do something? Are we going to give him the standard, I'll pray about it? Are we going to reject him outright? Or are we going to be willing to say yes? Henry Blackaby says that we're supposed to find out and look for where God is working and then go join him. And in many cases that works, right? You see where God is moving, you see where God is working, and then you go and offer your assistance. You go join them. If you see people feeding the hungry and God's moving and people's lives are being changed, go offer to help. Go pack a lunch, that sort of thing. But in the case of Mary, and in the case of us many times, we don't have to go looking. God comes to us. God comes right to us. Either he comes to us and whispers to us in his word, or through the Holy Spirit, or maybe through him using somebody else to talk to us. But God many times will come directly to us, and he's looking for a yes answer. And the question to you and I is, what will our answer be? For Mary, who would have been a teenage girl just out of puberty, literally, and they're just starting puberty, she would have been a really, really young girl. She had a lot that she had to think about when Gabriel showed up inside her house as she was waiting. She would have been surprised and stunned and wanting to know what this is. Up until this point, an angel had showed up to Zechariah, and Zechariah said no one knew, except Zacharias and those around him, where he was at. Mary didn't even know that the angel had showed up. She didn't know anything about John the Baptist at this time. So she's in her room, or whatever she's doing that day. An angel shows up, and so she is confronted with a proposition, something that God wants her to do, that God has asked her to do, that God requires from her, and so she has a choice to make. Do I say yes? Do I say no? Really, it was quite that simple. Do I accept? Do I say yes? or do I say no? So the work that God had given Mary to do was a very difficult situation, and she recognized that right away, right? How could a virgin, not just a virgin, how could a virgin who was betrothed to a man suddenly show up pregnant? Right? That was the quandary. How in the world could that happen? And we'll look more at what the implications of that. You guys already know what the implications would be in many ways, but we'll look deeper into that in a moment. But in an instant, they're saying you're going to have a baby, but you're not with the husband. And you're a virgin, and God's going to make this happen. And so she saw the dilemma, and she says in Luke chapter 1, verse 34, how can this be since I've never known a man? I don't know a man. How is this possible? That's the dilemma. God is saying, I'm going to do this. And she's saying, how is that even possible, God? I'm not with a man. You see the dilemma, right? Of saying yes. And God is asking her to do or be involved in something impossible. He's asking her to be involved in something that in all human reasoning and in all human understanding, it is absolutely impossible. And so the angel goes on, Gabriel goes on to tell her in verses 35 through 37, and the angel answered and said to her, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the highest will overshadow you. Therefore also that Holy One who is to be born will be called the Son of God. Now indeed Elizabeth, your relative, was also conceived a son in her old age, and this is now the 6th month for her who was called barren. For with God nothing is impossible. Now that's all said for a specific reason. Mary more than understands this is impossible. She more than understands that what God is asking of her, she cannot do. It's impossible for her. But Gabriel answers two big questions, doesn't he, in his statement. He says, God will do it. God will do it. He says, God, the Holy Spirit will move upon you. The child in you will be conceived by me, by God. I'm taking care of all the heavy lifting. Right? I'm going to put the child in your womb. And in case Mary thought, well, how in the world is that possible? Because it never happened before. He then said, and by the way, just so you know that I do impossible things, your relative Elizabeth, who's been barren and who's an old lady, guess what? She's been pregnant now for 6 months. Right? So he tells her all of this one message very specifically. I'm going to do this, and in case you question whether I can or not, here's a real situation in your life that would have been impossible that I made possible. And so Mary responds based on what the angel says to her. Behold, the maidservant of the Lord, let it be to me according to your word. Now that sounds all lovely and all perfect, that the angel shows up and, she says yes, and la-di-da-di-da, God's going to do the work, he's going to make, he's going to conceive the child. But there are always burdens and questions that come with saying yes. There are always burdens. There are always things that happen to us when you and I are willing to say yes. Some of those burdens, it means that our life will not be carefree. It doesn't mean that when you and I say yes to God, all of a sudden everything's going to be smooth sailing. It doesn't mean when you and I say yes to God that all of a sudden everything's going to work out just fine. That everything's going to go peachy. In fact, many times it's the exact opposite. That when we say yes to God in His initial calling, that's just one small piece of a lifelong puzzle. One small piece of a lifelong puzzle. To Mary, saying yes was just the beginning of 33 years that she was going to be raising, answering questions, having questions. She was raising God's Son. She was raising God in the flesh, and no matter what she was told, she could never properly understand what it meant the day that she had to watch her son arrested, beaten, hung upon the cross, and die. So she didn't realize the yes that she made 33 years before was going to result in such pain, such hurt, such suffering 33 years later, where she was going to lose the one that was promised to her, her firstborn child. So she says yes, but saying yes doesn't always mean that everything's going to be peachy keen. In fact, sometimes yes means being misunderstood. It means being mocked, made fun of. It means being criticized. It means people saying, what in the world do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? What have you gotten yourself into? You're not qualified. You're not called. You're not capable. You don't deserve this. You didn't hear from God. But the best illustration of that is Noah. Noah, who had never rained before, who wasn't even close to water, built a ginormous boat and put a bunch of animals in it, and people mocked him from the day he started building the boat. Mocked because of what God told him to do. Mocked because of what God said that he must do because of what was coming all of these hundreds of years later, because it took over 100 years to build the boat. And so we will be mocked when we say yes. There are many times when we will be maligned, when we will be told that we're not good enough, that we will be told that we don't deserve, we're not qualified. But God doesn't ask us to be good enough, and He doesn't ask us to try to figure it out on our own. God just simply asks us to say yes and then trust Him as we move forward. And you and I it will always raise two questions when God asks us to do something. The first is the inquisitive, why me? Where you say, God, why would you ever choose me? Don't you know who I am? Don't you know where I come from? Don't you know what I did? Don't you know that I never did this and I never went to Bible school? Don't you know that I messed up in this way? Don't you know that I struggle with this habit? Don't you know? Don't you know? Don't you know? How could you ever possibly choose me? The sincere, why me? Why would you ever choose me? So when God comes to us, that's the first tactic the devil uses to discourage us from saying yes. Is to discount our own worth, our own value, to discount ourselves based on our past or based on something that we're currently dealing with, to immediately disqualify ourselves. When you look at the story of Mary, she was just barely into puberty when she was betrothed. So when the angel showed up to her, she was a young teenage girl, very young. Not only that, but the angel had appeared to a priest in Jerusalem, which kind of made sense. He's a priest. He's in Jerusalem. Priests were special. They offered incense before God. They supposedly had they were actually belonged to God. He was the first fruits from the tribes of Israel, the Levites. They were special. So when the angel showed up and God spoke to Zacharias, why was a surprise ultimately? You look at it and you go, that kind of makes sense. Why wouldn't he show up to a priest, or why wouldn't he do it in Jerusalem? Jerusalem is like the city. And so it just made sense. But for an angel to show up to a girl, a teenage girl, in the middle of nowhere, which is a place called Nazareth. Now, let me tell you about Nazareth. Nazareth was surrounded by Gentile people groups. It was off by itself along the coast. It was surrounded by people, Gentiles. People like to go to Nazareth to vanish. People went to Nazareth to hide. These were the people that you didn't really want to be around. These were the people that you didn't really want to associate with, right? Nazareth did not have a good reputation. It had a bunch of people in it that you didn't probably want to associate with. It was Jews who weren't actually living out being a Jew, many of them. There were criminals, and there were lots of things happening in Nazareth. That's why Nathanael said what? When he was told that the Messiah was coming from Nathanael, can anything good possible, or coming from Nazareth, can anything good possible come from Nazareth? How is that even possible? Have you seen that junk pile? Have you seen what it produces? It is a mess. They're uneducated. They don't hold kosher. They don't, they're eating stuff they ain't supposed to eat, and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're these are rough individuals, these are poor people. You don't want to be around those folks. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Nazareth had a reputation of being a terrible place. Yet God chose not Jerusalem. God chose not some esteemed person, but God chose a teenage girl and a horrible place to choose her to use to be the mother of his son. So if God can choose a teenage girl from a place that everyone else despised, God can choose you and I. And I learned something, which all my years of studying, all my years looking at Mary, I learned something that I want to share with you today. When Gabriel says in Luke chapter 1, verse 28, rejoice, highly favored one. When he says that to her, I learned while studying this that there's only one other place in the entire New Testament where that language is used. Highly favored one. And that place is in the book of Ephesians chapter 1, verse 6, where Paul writes to the praise of the glory of his grace, by which he made us accepted in the beloved. That language that's translated favored one is the same place only used once in other place in the Bible, Ephesians chapter 1, and it is Paul referring to the grace of God that only God can give. Mary did not earn her favored status. God granted it. Right? Because that's what Paul says. We can't earn grace. God gives grace. It's a gift. Mary didn't earn her favored status. God gave her favored status. Now what does that mean to you and me? It means that no matter how terrible I think I am, or how unworthy I think I am, or how unqualified I think I am, it's not what I think, it's what God declares it to be. So God says, I'm favored, therefore I'm favored. I wasn't favored before God said it, but when God says it, I'm favored. When God says, I am now forgiven, I'm forgiven. When God says, you are qualified, you are qualified. Not because I was qualified or favored on my own, but by a gift of God's grace and mercy, he calls you favored. She didn't earn it. She didn't deserve it. She was only favored because God called her favored. I don't know if that's coming through. Like, you and I, when we look at when God talks to us, when God asks us to do something, it is not because he knows we can do it. It's not because you're qualified to do it, or I'm qualified to do it. It's not because I've done something that has elevated me in God's sight that I can do it. It has nothing to do with any of that. God exalts whom he wants to exalt, and God tears down whom he wants to tear down. So when God calls you to do something, he didn't call you and I to do it because we were qualified. He called you and I to do it, and he qualified us when he called us. Not vice versa. I can't qualify myself. God has to qualify me. Nothing in and of myself qualifies me to be used by God in any way. God is the one who gives the value, the call, the favor, the grace, independent of me. And that should make some of us excited because I don't have a past that I'm proud of, and I have said and done things that I'm not proud of. I don't deserve to preach his word, and I don't deserve to be a pastor, and I don't deserve any of those things. In fact, when God called me, I laughed in his face, and I told him I couldn't do it, and I told him I wasn't qualified, and I told him I didn't want to do it, and God called me, and it wasn't that I earned it or deserved it. He called me, and when he called me, he qualified me. When he called you, he qualified you. So when God speaks to you, and he asks you to do something, he is not asking you to do something that you can do or because he knows you can do it. He's asking you to do it because he's already given you the ability to do it as a gift. It should change our whole outlook on everything. We live in a world where it's all about my strength, my talent, my abilities, my reputation. All about what I have built up that qualifies me. None of that means anything to God. What man's reputation to the world means nothing to God. Nothing. God doesn't need qualification. God doesn't need our talents. God doesn't need our abilities. He doesn't need your personality. He doesn't need your anything that you would do to say that, oh, that makes me qualified. Because it is God's gift that makes us qualified. Yes. His favor was, Mary was not favored because she was some special, super obedient young teenage girl. She was favored because God said she was favored. God told her she was favored. And so that's so critical to us that when you and I are asking God, why would you ever choose me? You know that the calling's in the choice. That he qualified when he asked you to do it. That he favored you when he asked you to do it. So why say no? Why fight with God? Why argue with God? Because he wouldn't have asked you if he hadn't already given you what you need to do it as his free gift. He qualified us when he called us. That just blows my mind because I had never really thought about it that way with Mary. I've been taught my whole life that she was special and blah, 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 blah. And she was, don't get me wrong. She was special, though, not because of her own merits, because God declared her special. That's pretty amazing. That's life-changing. That should change our whole outlook when God challenges us to do something. Because what he's saying is, I have declared you capable of doing what it is I'm asking you to do. You couldn't do it without me. You couldn't do it without me. But because I'm telling you to, I'm asking you to, you are capable. And then the second question we ask is the accusatory why me. So there's the sincere, God, why me? You know I don't deserve it. And then there's the accusatory, why me? God, why in the world would you allow this stuff to happen to me? Right? You say yes, and then you're like, what did I do to you? I was being obedient. I was doing what you told me to do. I was trying to walk according to your will. I said yes. What are you doing, God? Why me? Why is everything breaking? Why does it seem like it's so hard? Why am I frustrated? Why are things not working out perfectly? Why me, God? Why do you let me go through this? Look at Mary. When Mary, she was betrothed, which meant that even though they weren't married legally, they were put together, and she could not, if she were to go to another man or be betrothed to another man, it was considered adultery. So what would happen is you would be betrothed, a woman would be betrothed to a man, and once he got his house in order, as we talked about last week, and got everything set up, and he could provide for a family, then they would have a marriage ceremony, a marriage feast, and they would consummate the marriage. All right? Once he got his house in order. She was betrothed, and she was a virgin. So this was going to produce certain problems when she showed up pregnant, which we know from last week is why Joseph said, I'm going to put her away silently. So now Mary, who's going to believe when Mary says an angel came and told me I'm having the Messiah and he's God's son? Right? People will be looking at her going, you're insane. You're in Nazareth. You're a teenage girl. What you did was you cheated. You either messed up with Joseph before you actually consummated the marriage properly, or you went with some other dude. Something else happened. There ain't no way God did that in you. It's never happened before. So she was going to be mocked, made fun of, an outcast, criticized, right? She said yes, and all her yes at first resulted in was criticism and staring eyes and people, judging her. She had to have been like, well, now, God, hold on for a second. I mean, I kind of knew that it might be hard, but I didn't think it would be this bad. You know? I mean, think about it. When she first told Joseph, what did Joseph say? See you later. He said, I'm going to divorce you. We're breaking off this betrothment. Right? That's what he said. So her first response to the exciting news that Gabriel told her she was going to give birth to the Son of God was her husband-to-be to say, I don't want you anymore. Now, she's excited. She is going to be the mother of the Messiah, which every Jewish girl would have wanted to be. The Messiah was known, knowing that he was coming someday. They wanted the Messiah. Any Jewish girl would have been happy to have given birth to the Messiah under any circumstance but this. Right? Because it would never be accepted, never be understood. And she's excited that she's accepted and what God's told her. And she goes and she tells her husband, and her husband says, I'm not interested. Sorry, honey. It ain't me, so it's someone else. I'm going to put you away. And he loved her and he was going to divorce her quietly. But her first response was, I don't believe you. I think you're lying. She said yes to God. And the first person she told shot her down. You ever had that happen before? When God tells you to do something you're excited about, you go to do it, and the first person you come in contact with, or as you're starting the process, shoots you down and tells you that you're a liar, you didn't hear from God, or you're not qualified? We've all had that happen to us at some point. If you haven't, you will have it happen to you. Where you know that God spoke to you and you're excited about it, you tell someone and they immediately crush you. They immediately tell you all the reasons why it's not possible, all the reasons why you didn't hear, all the reasons why God wouldn't do that. Right? That's what happened to Mary. And it had to be, why me, God? Why is it happening this way? Joseph should accept me. You're the one that ordained this. When that happened, did Mary say, God, I've changed my mind? No, she didn't. Did Mary say, God, won't you go favor somebody else for a while? No, she didn't. She stuck with her yes. She didn't turn it to a no. When things got tough, she didn't change her mind. When things get tough, when you say yes to God, don't change your mind. I can tell you that this experience, just with this church, has had me want to change my mind a lot. Right? Feeling of hopelessness, knowing that I'm not, knowing that there's so many weaknesses that I have and things that I can't handle and still have issues with to this day, where I'm like, God, wouldn't it just be easier to quit? Right? Wouldn't it be better if somebody else did it? I prayed that prayer. Wouldn't it be better if you sent somebody else in? Not out of some sense of self-righteousness, but out of a real sense of, God, I just can't do this. Why me? It's overwhelming. I can't deal with all the things that have to be dealt with. But I didn't change my mind. And many of those who have started this haven't changed their mind. Even though we've had ups and downs and bad things and good things, and we've had personality conflicts and all of these things that have happened, no one changed their mind. When God gives you something, you say yes and you walk in it. When things get tough, don't change your mind. Don't become discouraged when you walk out the church door and the devil starts telling you you didn't hear right. Don't be discouraged when you walk out the church door, you get up from your praying, and all of a sudden the devil says, you couldn't have heard right because you did X, Y, and Z. Or because you thought X, Y, and Z. Or because you can't do this and you can't do that. Don't change your mind once you say yes. Once things get hard, don't change your mind. Mary didn't change her mind, even though the first person she told shot her down and called her a liar. He did, because he wouldn't have wanted to put her away or divorce her if he believed her. He didn't believe her, he called her a liar. You didn't hear from God. You're literally trying to lie to me to make me believe that you weren't unfaithful to me. But here's the great thing about God, because she did not change her answer. Because she did not change her answer, she didn't flip-flop. God supernaturally went to Joseph and said, Joseph, you need to marry her because what's in her is from me. she's telling you the truth. So when you have a roadblock that pops up in your life, if you will not change your answer, God will supernaturally intervene and he will destroy the roadblock. No matter how bad the roadblock looks, and no matter how big it looks, and how daunting it looks, no matter how big the challenge looks, if you will not change your answer and you will continue to say yes to God, God will demolish the roadblock. He will supernaturally intervene to change from what seemed impossible to possible. Because it took a supernatural intervention with Joseph for him to change his mind. Joseph had decided what he was going to do, and it took God showing up, telling him not to do it. And God did that because Mary did not change her mind when she was faced with the rejection. When you are faced with rejection, when God gives you a task to do, stick with it, stay strong, don't change your answer, and trust that God will supernaturally do what only God can do. Amen. Don't give up. Don't hit the challenge or hit the obstacle and change your answer to no. Because God promised that he will tear it down, destroy it. He will make a way. He will supernaturally intervene if we will stay faithful, stay true, and allow our yes to remain yes.
Thank you for listening to this message. We hope that you enjoyed it and were blessed by it. Each month we have people from all over the world who listen to the messages made available. If you've been blessed by this ministry, would you consider making a donation of any amount to help support us as we continue to reach the lost for Christ? Donations can be made online at www.reviveoc.org or by check at Revive Outreach Church, 411 Chatham Heights Road, Suite 101, Fredericksburg, Virginia, 22405. Thank you for your prayers and your continued support. May God richly bless you.